Hello, I'm David Harper with the BBC News. The military authorities behind last week's coup in Myanmar have carried out another wave of arrests of officials linked to the ousted government. They're reported to include one of Aung San Suu Kyi's closest advisers, Chaw Tee-sway, along with provincial chief ministers and members of the Election Commission. Earlier, the United States called for all detained politicians in Myanmar to be released. Here's our Southeast Asia correspondent, Jonathan Head.
As protests against the coup continue for a sixth day, the ruling military council has drafted a new law to give it greater powers to censor the internet and social media and to criminalise posts which are deemed threatening to public order. President Biden has responded to the coup by approving new sanctions, including a freeze on around $1 billion in bank deposits held in the US and restrictions on exports. He promised, though, that the US would continue to support healthcare and civil society in Myanmar.
In Japan, the head of the Tokyo Olympics Organising Committee is stepping down after being condemned for making sexist remarks. Yoshiro Mori will offer his resignation at a special meeting on Friday. He's come under pressure for saying that women spoke too much in meetings and were annoying. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes reports from Tokyo.
83-year-old Yoshiro Mori first apologised and then said he withdrew the comments unconditionally. The Japanese government declared the matter closed, but they had not reckoned on the huge local and international backlash against Mr. Mori. A petition demanding his resignation quickly garnered nearly 150,000 signatures. Around 400 Olympic and Paralympic volunteers quit, and Japanese tennis star Naomi Osaka condemned Mr. Mori's words, calling them ignorant. Then on Wednesday, the head of Toyota, one of the biggest Olympic sponsors, weighed in, calling Mr. Mori's comments regrettable and out of keeping with Toyota's values. That may have been the final straw.
The United States and China have given contrasting accounts of President Biden's first phone call with Xi Jinping since taking office last month. Relations between the world's two largest economies are at historically low levels. The last time their leaders spoke directly was last March. From Beijing, here's Stephen McDonnell.
Perhaps not surprisingly, the official readouts from Washington and Beijing were quite different regarding the first conversation between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping as counterparts. According to state media here, the Chinese leader stressed that the two superpowers had special responsibilities to promote peace and development at a time of great uncertainty, adding that confrontation between them would be a disaster. The White House statement said the US president spoke about China's unfair trade practices, the crackdown in Hong Kong, Xinjiang human rights abuses, and Beijing's assertiveness towards Taiwan.
Our China correspondent Stephen McDonnell reporting. World News from the BBC. Democratic Party prosecutors at the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump have presented previously unseen security camera footage of the storming of Congress. One clip from a policeman's body camera showed him being punched, kicked and beaten with poles as Mr. Trump's supporters fought their way into the Capitol building last month. Democrats said the attack was deliberately incited by Mr. Trump and was part of a pattern of cultivating violence. Scientists say global emissions of chemicals that harm the Earth's protective ozone layer are once again falling after a surge traced to factories in China. CFCs were banned worldwide in 2010. Victoria Gill has the details.
It was back in 2018 when scientists first published a strange and worrying discovery about ozone-depleting chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, in the atmosphere. The researchers' atmospheric measurements picked up a new source of CFC emissions that they managed to pin down to East China. Detective work by China's Environmental Investigation Agency and by environmental journalists found that the chemical was being used in insulation foam that was being produced by companies in that region. This new study reveals that through this combination of atmospheric chemistry, investigative journalism, and enforcement of the global treaty that banned CFC production, those emissions have been stopped.
A new report has set out the scale of the economic problem facing oil and gas producing countries if the world meets internationally agreed targets to limit global warming. A London think tank called Carbon Tracker says dozens of governments, many of them in the Middle East and Africa, face total losses of $9 trillion in the next 2 decades. For some, including Angola and Azerbaijan, the predicted loss in state revenue is above 40%. In tennis, the defending women's singles champion Sofia Kenin has been knocked out of the Australian Open. The American was beaten by Kaia Kanepi from Estonia, who is ranked number 65 in the world. BBC News.